إلا بالله العلي العظيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين بالقاسم المصطفى محمد صل على ثم الصلاة والسلام التحية والإكرام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين إلى قيام يوم الدين أما بعد صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. Mu'mineen, mu'minat, brothers and sisters in Islam and Iman, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. A few nights ago, we started going through Surah Al-Ikhlas, Surah Al-Tawheed, and talking about the tafsir there. From then, we moved on to the concept of Tawheed, specifically in the eyes and through the words of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib, alayhi salatu wasalam, as we began to commemorate his shahadat last night, and we will continue with that topic for tonight, and inshallah, if we need, possibly tomorrow as well. A few of the points that we had mentioned, that Tawheed itself, the idea of monotheism, it's not something that we can take lightly, that there is something bigger to Tawheed. It's not, this something that you and I understand in our minds that we relegate to just God being one, and then we kind of are finished. There's something deeper there we have to understand. And we talked about how we have many riwayat which stress this importance of Tawheed, how the Imam alayhi salam is spending time in the Battle of Jamal, answering a Bedouin who comes to him, spending a lot of time answering his question, and even condemning his own soldiers who are arguing with the Imam, saying, why are you spending so much time? So this is what we are fighting for. We are fighting for Tawheed. And we see that the Imam is saying, and the other Ahlul Bayt say that Tawheed is half of our deen. Tawheed is the life, hayatul nafs, the life of our nafs, the life of our soul. It's what our reason to exist. How can it be that Tawheed, if it's described like this, if it's the main focus of our deen, how can it be something as simple as saying that God is one and not more than one? So there's got to be some deeper elements, which inshallah we will try to explore tonight after a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So, when we talk about Tawheed, in the riwayat, it mentions for us the two different types that exist, right? And the first type is one that we've already discussed when we were initially going through the first few ayat of Surah Al-Ikhlas, when we said that there's a general idea that, we've all kind of understood, we've all been born with, we've all been raised with when it comes to Tawheed. It's that, look, Allah is one, He's not more than one, He doesn't have partners, He doesn't have associates, He has no other creator. That's the general idea. The idea that's meant to get across to us is that Tawheed is the opposite and in contrast to polytheism, to shirk. That's what it is. Now, this is not wrong, obviously, that is one aspect of Tawheed, right? But this is what we call a numerical aspect of Tawheed. It's Tawheed adadi, or kammi. It's us telling Allah, okay, you're in a box, you're only one, there's only one of you. Is it correct? Yes, it is correct from an aspect, right? So that kind of Tawheed, but that's a simple or only one part of that. There's something else, and we said what we would try to do is to extract it from the Arabic itself. And why we want to do that is, many individuals, when they don't like, let's say, some of the deeper meanings, the tafsir, the ta'wil, some of these deeper explanations that are offered by mufassirin, by ulama, by urafa, things like that, they always have this idea that, you're just making it up as you're going along. Where's the evidence for it? So sometimes, and this is a practice that many of our own urafa that they do, is that everything that we say, the urafa say, the awliya say, we can take this from the Quran itself, and we can take it from the Arabic itself too. They say that Allah, in choosing the Arabic language, He's done it for a reason. Because Arabic is a precise mathematical language, that no two words are the same. Even if they all have similar meanings, there are nuances in each and every different word, which might seem like it talks about the same cause or same effect, but they are differences, right? And we talked about a few nights ago how wahid and ahad seem like they're the same, but there are important nuances there. So what we'll do, inshallah, for tonight is just go through this idea. So Tawheed, now for those of you who may have studied some Arabic before, a little bit of Arabic grammar, have some familiarity, Arabic, right, especially this is something they teach you in sarf, in what they call morphology, in tasrif. Arabic is basically based on a bunch of root letters, right? You start with 3, 4, and sometimes 5 root letters. You take them and you transform those letters, put them on different patterns, and you get various different derivative meanings. So you start with one root, you take that root, and you start to branch it out into different derivatives. So anybody who can at least pinpoint the 3 original letters and they know the patterns can figure out pretty much any Arabic word they want to, right? So like typical examples is when you have something like ilm, right? Ain, lam, mim, ilm. Ilm, as we know, is knowledge. So from ilm, if I want to talk about somebody who is giving out knowledge to somebody else, we call them a mu'allim, right? It's coming from the same word as ilm. If we want to talk about somebody who possesses knowledge, we talk about alim. So I just added an extra alif after the ain. If we want to talk about the idea of education or passing on knowledge, that's called ta'lim or ta'allum, learning and education, right? If I want to mention and describe somebody who has a large amount of knowledge, a lot of knowledge, we don't just use alim, we use something else, we say allama, right? And all of these are based on specific patterns, right, that are created, pattern of fa'il, for example, or mufa'ila, all these patterns that they create in Arabic, and you just take your root letters, you plug them in, add the extra letters, and then you have your new meaning. It's that simple, right? Very, very mathematical, very easy. Once you learn all this, creating other meanings, creating new words is very, very simple. So each of these patterns comes with its own meaning as well too, right? Each pattern gives something, right, very specific. So now let's come to what we're talking about when we're talking about Tawheed. Tawheed, if you remember, we asked the question last night, how do normally we translate it, or how do we hear Tawheed translated? Monotheism, right? Or it's the oneness of Allah. That's what people talk about is the meaning of Tawheed, right? As I'm sure how you've learned it. If you pretty much open up any book right now, any book of Aqidah, whether Sunni or Shia, every single one of these ulama or speakers or scholars will translate the word Tawheed as monotheism or oneness of Allah, or oneness of God, every single time. So, okay, let's take that, put this in the back of our mind, and we'll come back to it to say whether this is correct or whether it's a bit more, it's a bit deficient. Okay. So this word Tawheed is on the pattern known as taf'il, right? It's a specific pattern. Now, instead of me just telling you what the meanings are, I want to go in a different way. All of us know words on this pattern, right, that sound like they're on this pattern. Even if we don't know Arabic, we'll know. I'll give you 1 or 2 examples, and you can, tell me some yourself. And then we'll start to go through what their meanings are. We'll take the common shared meaning between all of them, like the root essential pattern, and then we'll apply it back to the concept of Tawheed. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Okay, so this pattern of taf'il. So one example is a word like takbir, right? So takbir, right, when we say Allahu Akbar, that is on the same pattern of taf'il. What are some other words that you can think of that are on the same pattern, right? It sounds like taf'il, sounds like takbir. Okay? Starts with the ta, a bunch of other words come in, and there's like an E sound and then a final letter. After we perform, tadfeen, ahsant, right? Tadfeen, meaning burying somebody, dafa, right? Very good. And related to that, there's also taghsil, technically you could say too, the act of doing ghusl, performing ghusl on somebody. You have ta'aleem, we already mentioned. Ta'aleem is education. What do we recite after we're done with salah? What is the most mustahab thing to do as soon as we're done with salah? Tasbih, right? Okay, there we have another one. When somebody is offering a commentary on the Quran, what is that called? Commentary, explaining the Quran, clarifying the Quran. Tafsir, tafsir, right? So we mentioned, Tahrir, ahsan, tahrir is a very good one, ahsan. We have at the final burial rites, when someone now is being buried and after they're buried, some people usually recite something for them as well too, right? Anybody know what that's called? Talqeen, ahsant, right? So talqeen's another one. When we talk about something related to a person's destiny, taqdeer, ahsant, right? We got that one. Wahhabis do this to Shias all the time. Takfir. Takfir is another one, right? Not tafkir, they do takfir, right? There's a difference between those two words. So you get the game now, right? All of these things, right? We've heard these words before. We have a general idea, right? Now, so what is takbir? It's when, whether Sunnis or Shias, when we say that, we're talking about when somebody says Allahu Akbar, right? Takbir is the act of or describing somebody saying Allahu Akbar. That's why, although we don't necessarily do it so much, obviously more in Ahl Sunnah, because that's pretty much the only chant that they have, right? They'll say takbir and people will say Allahu Akbar. We do for those who are from the Indo-Pak Desi background, not a takbir, not a risalat, not a hadri, right? So we have all of that too. So it's describing an action, right? That we are saying something, right? Same thing when we recite the takbir in salah, we're saying Allahu Akbar, that's what it is. Okay. Tasbih. Now this is where there's a bit of a confusion. So in some languages, not in original Arabic, but in some languages, tasbih is used to actually describe the beads themselves, right? But that's not actually the word you would use in Arabic. And if you ask an Arab, they don't call it a tasbih. What do they call it? Misbah, right? They call it misbah, which is an instrument of tasbih, basically. Tasbih is describing the action, right? So you're performing tasbih, right? It's okay. If you want to use the word differently, not a big deal. You won't go to hell for it. You can use it however you want. It's fine. Tafsir is what? It's the act of commentary, right? It's somebody doing it. It's an action, right? They're commentating or offering commentary. Tadfeen is the act of burying, right? The burial process. Talqeen is this recitation, this dictation that's done to somebody, right? That's passed away, that's now in their grave. Taqdeer is putting either an estimation, or we'll talk more about this on the final night of Laylatul Qadr. The taqdeer is about estimation, understanding, and setting up a level of a destiny for somebody, right? So all of these words that we're talking about, takfir, it's the act of calling somebody a kafir. Every single one of these is what? These are actions. They're not verbs, but they're actions. So the technical term in English, you wouldn't use the word noun and you wouldn't use the word verb, but you would use the word what's called a verbal noun. It's a noun that's describing an action, right? So sometimes you use ing or ion, right? So education, right? Or glorification, right? Supplication. That's where this taf'il form is coming from, right? So now, we go back. Tawheed, which comes from wahda, right? Tawheed, we have defined as monotheism, or oneness of God. Is that an action or a noun? It's a noun, right? It's describing a thing. It's describing an idea. So does our typical translation and explanation of Tawheed match up with the actual Arabic? It doesn't. In order for Tawheed as a concept to line up, to match the pattern that it's on, it has to be describing an action. It cannot just simply be a noun. It has to be a verbal noun. So if takbir and tasbih and tafsir and tadfeen, all these, I could have used tatbir as well, but I don't want to use an example from the minbar. All of these are just describing actions. Tawheed must be an action as well too. Tawheed has to be describing something that you and I are doing. So Tawheed is not monotheism, it's monotheisting. It's a copyrighted word that I made up, by the way, right? So if you're going to use it, you have to pay me royalties, right? It's monotheisting. It's not believing in the oneness of Allah or oneness of Allah. It's putting into practice the fact that Allah is one, that He is unified and in unity and unique, and everything is just an extension and an expression and a manifestation of Allah. That is practical Tawheed. It's seeing the world as a reflection of Allah's names. Or if we're taking it back to the original word of wahda, we should know the translation for that is unity, right? So what are we doing with Tawheed is that we're unifying things. Everything that we typically do is what, right? I see a phone here, I see this here, a laptop, this, individuals. When we think about the opposite of Tawheed, it's not shirk. The opposite of Tawheed would be what? Takthir. There's Tawheed and Takthir. Takthir, coming from kathra, means multiplying. Or kathra means multiplicity. Takthir means to multiply things, to consider them separate and independent things, to constantly add numbers and things like that. So takthir is the numerical or spiritual representation for what shirk is. If you want to perform takthir to godliness, then you become a mushrik because you've added more than one God now. So takthir is the opposite of tawheed. What you and I do in our day-to-day life is we perform takthir, is that we are saying, okay, this is one thing, that's another thing, that's another thing, that's something, that's something, that's something. And yes, Allah is something separate as well too. We sometimes fail to make that larger, greater, macro, divine connection between all things and to actually see it as a reflection of Allah. That this is just a reflection of Allah's names. This is a manifestation of Allah's names. Even the terrible things we see in the world, the zalimeen, the fasiqeen, the dhulm, the oppression, all of this that we know, that we see, that we hear, that we experience, all of that is a reflection of Allah too. And sometimes we separate it. If you remember a few nights ago, we brought this question up. When people, they see things and say, how could Allah allow this to happen? Well, it could happen, or I can think about that and be worried about a question like that if I haven't practiced tawheed. If I haven't seen that Allah in His unity and in His reality, which is a part of His unity, it's an extension of Him. So if something's taking place, if there's oppression that's happening to the Palestinians, to the Yemenis, or to anybody else, or to people in Sham now, then all of it is out of an extension of the irada and the will of Allah. And if I'm unable to see that, it's because I haven't performed enough or deep enough tawheed. I haven't brought everything together yet. I haven't put all the puzzle pieces together. So that's another analogy that works too, is normally, we see all these individual pieces of reality, like puzzle pieces, but sometimes we fail to put everything together, recognizing and understanding that it's supposed to be one giant picture. And the reason why we get so worried, we get so stressed out, so anxious, is because we can't see the whole picture yet, because Allah has only given us a few different pieces here and there. وَمَا أُتِيتُم مِّنَ الْعِلْمِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. Allah says, I only give you a little bit of knowledge. We don't get the whole piece. We don't get every single piece on the board. We don't get everything. We get a few pieces here and there. And everybody else in the world that has no godliness, that has no taqwa, that's not concerned, what do they have? They have a bunch of these random pieces and they have no idea how they go together. Why do you think everybody else is worried, confused about how to run their life? Right? They don't know their gender. They don't know what species they are anymore. They don't have any ideas. Why? Because everything is disconnected. So they have no clue what their identity is. They have no idea if there's right and wrong. There's no way to put all of this together. So everything then becomes what? It becomes subjective. The same way they treat modern art. Modern art, when they look at it and say, I don't care what the author or the painter, the artist has done, I'm going to put my own message onto it, and that's what I think is right. Art is subjective. They look out at reality, they do the same thing. It's all subjective. I can make up whatever meaning I feel like. Whatever I want to say, that's what goes. And all these modern day philosophers from the Renaissance up until now, that's what they've been pushing for in society. Forget God, forget your intellect, all that matters is your nafs. They don't use that word, they use ego, obviously. And sometimes they don't use that word too. They just say your heart's desires, your intuition, whatever you feel, right? Your self-truth, live your self-truth, live your truth, live your own reality, empower yourself. All these kind of buzzwords and terms we hear all the time. So all of this is coming from the same idea that they don't have a belief in reality, in truth, whereas alhamdulillah, those of us who are, anybody, not just Muslims, but anybody who has at least some objective reality belief, namely in God, they can put all these puzzle pieces together. Whatever they're given, they say, okay, I can put this in a place or in a formation that God has told me to do. And I can make sense out of it. And the ones that are missing, Allah has already filled in the gaps anyway, so I know what this is supposed to look like. I know what eventually this is going to turn into, so I don't have to play guessing games. I don't have to be worried, and I shouldn't be worried. If we all understand that all these puzzle pieces have been predestined and kind of set up by Allah, and you and I are just kind of following suit and playing the game, and our test now is to see, do we really have enough iman and faith in this kind of greater game that Allah has created for us in this world. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. This is where you see these famous riwayat, right? Where Imam Ali alayhi salam saying things like, مَا رَأَيْتُ شَيْئًا إِلَّا وَرَأَيْتُ اللَّهَ قَبْلَهُ وَمَعَهُ وَبَعْدَهُ. Says, I see nothing except that I see Allah before it, with it, and after it. Right? This is just another way that his daughter explains as well too, مَا رَأَيْتُ إِلَّا جَمِيلًا. Right? Bibi Zainab saying, the only thing that I see is beauty, is no different than Imam Ali alayhi salam saying that everything that I see, it's just Allah. That's all I see. This context was what? Because their household was founded upon Tawheed. Right? The household of the Ahlul Bayt is a household of Tawheed. So all their children only see things through a Tawheedi lens. And this, again, this is our issue and something that hopefully we can work on in the month of Ramadan and outside as well too, is how do we really unify and see a single reality? Not see these things as separate, not see these things as independent things, because this issue itself of seeing things separate, according to many individuals, this is the actual mistake that Shaitan made. You know, many people, when they talk about the mistake of Iblis, the mistake of Shaitan, there's multiple different explanations. Right? They talk about, for example, that his arrogance and his kufr. I've heard, somebody has described it as him being racist. All these weird, kind of strange ways of describing it. But some say no. There's a deeper understanding that we can look at too. And inshallah, we'll do this tomorrow night. Is to try to see within this Tawheedi lens, from the two paradigms of Tawheed and Takfir, how this relates to the story of Iblis and his fall, and how this also relates to and connects to our issues as well, and how the strategy of Shaitan has also evolved over time and has turned into and created this modern society that you and I live in. And this modern society, although we may think I'm a Muslim, I'm trying to be a good Shia, I'm doing what I have to, I'm not following in the footsteps of Iblis. I don't follow that his school of thought. I'm not doing anything like that. Like, okay, that's fine, but there are specific types of thinking that Iblis has as well too. There is specific ideologies that even Muslims unconsciously, unknowingly are following, and they've picked it as a strategy. And sometimes it runs our households, even though we have love for the Ahlul Bayt, we have connection to the Quran, but there is sometimes shaitani type thinking that happens there. And inshallah, we'll again go into more details about this tomorrow night, inshallah. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. One more salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So far, what we have done is, as we started with the tafsir of Surah Al-Ikhlas, we then moved on. We took a small break from that, and inshallah, after the nights of Qadr, we will try to return to that. We started to talk about Tawheed through the eyes and the words of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. We started that last night. We talked about how the importance about Tawheed was mentioned by him in many stages, even when it comes to the battlefield. The Imam Ali would not put aside a concept like Tawheed and would describe it to individuals even in that situation. Last night, as we began going through the story of the Shahada and the Musibah and Masa'ib of our Mawla Ali, we talked about how on the eve of the 19th, he was in the house of Kulthum, had his simple iftar. He left the house, and according to some, even the animals screamed, wailed, and cried for him and lamented for him. He was up all night reciting Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Woke up Ibn Muljam and others, recited the adhan himself that morning, that Fajr morning on the 19th. Then when the salah began, he goes down into sujood, and this is where the Mad'un Ibn Muljam strikes him with the sword that was soaked in poison. Some say that it was soaked in poison for 3 days. It was an intense amount of poison there. Once he was struck, there were many riwayat about what was said, what was heard. The most famous, of course, is where they say Imam Ali, instead of screaming out in pain, as anybody normally would after being struck in such a severe manner like this and being caught, taken by surprise, we don't find narrations that say Imam Ali screamed, that he cried in pain, that all he said was Fustu wa Rabbil Ka'bah, that in the name of Allah, I have succeeded by the Lord, the Rabb, the nurturer of the Ka'bah. And some say that the cries and sounds from the heavens came, and people, they say they heard the angels saying, Tahaddamat Allah arkan al-huda, that the pillars of justice and righteousness have been destroyed. Qutila ابن عم المصطفى قتل الوصي المجتبى قتل علي المرتضى قتله أشقى الأشقياء. The worst of individuals has killed the individual who is the cousin-in-law, the nephew of the Prophet. He is the son-in-law. He is the wasi. He is the chosen one. And then after this, when this happened, the Muslims, they rushed Ibn Muljam. They grabbed him, they took him to the side. And while they wanted to initially deal with Ibn Muljam, Imam Ali said, no, this salah must continue first, and we must finish the Fajr prayers. Imam Ali then tells his son, Imam Hassan, to go forward and to lead the salah in his place. So Imam Ali moves to the side of the first line, and because of the intense amount of pain, he cannot pray standing up, he has to pray sitting down now. So as his son is now leading his father in salah, they say Imam Ali was trying to stay conscious with all this blood coming out from his head, trying to finish his salah. And finally, when Imam Hassan alayhi salam finishes, then Imam Hussein, they come rushing to their father. The Muslims, they seize Ibn Muljam. They say, the riwayat say, that Imam Hassan takes the head of his father, he puts it in his lap, and he begins crying profusely, seeing the state that his father is in. And when he sees how much blood is pouring from his father, he begins crying. These tears come down. They fall onto the face of Imam Ali. And they say when it fell down onto the face of Imam Ali, he got conscious again. He regained his consciousness. He turned and he says, Ya Bunayya, oh my son, are you crying for me over something like this? This is nothing. Why are you crying over something like this? Don't you know these things happen? This is the way life and death happen. Don't worry about me right now. I'm with a group of people. They're all sending salam to me. Rasulullah is greeting me, telling me, Ya Ali, ta'al, come to me, Ya Ali. It's time for you. We have been waiting for you. Ya Hassan, I can see your mother Fatima. She's waiting for me and she's been calling me as well now too. Imam Hassan tries to tie his head together. But even as he tied to try to stop the blood from flowing, that blood flowed down onto his face. They say on that day, just like on the day of Ashura, when Imam Hussein's face, his beard was covered with blood of Ali al-Asghar, they say Imam Ali's beard was dyed with blood as well. When finally they grab Ibn Muljam, when they say, what is going on here? What is happening? They ask about what we should do with Ibn Muljam. People were there ready to kill him right away. He says, no, since there was one strike on me, you can only do one strike on him. If he dies because of that, so be it. If he doesn't, then leave it be. Make sure you feed him. Make sure you take care of him. This is the way Imam Ali was talking about one of his own killers. But would his son, would Imam Hussein get the same sort of treatment on the day of Ashura? Would he be treated the same exact way? When Shimr al-Mal'un came and sat on the chest of Imam Hussein, when he sat like that, and when Imam Hussein was saying to let him be, to leave from this, because if he continues forward, then only Jahannam and only hellfire would be his promise. But even there, Ibn Shimr refused and took the beard of Imam Hussein and ended his life like that. على لعنة الله على قوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون رضا بقضائه وتسليما لأمره. صلوات على محمد وآل محمد.